Welcome, listeners. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. This is episode 121. The date is March 2nd, 2021. It's 21s. And joining me as usual is my good friend, Brad Nye. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Evan.
How you doing, man?
Not bad. I'm excited it's going to warm up. I saw something that we might not have snow cover by this time next week. So
cool, man. I dig that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I'm heading for a Daytona Bike Week on Thursday, Friday, whatever. So down in Daytona Beach, and I booked my Airbnb back in December, and got a notice from the owner yesterday morning that she canceled my reservation. What? I know. So I'm like, what the hell? How could, and there's no recourse. You can't do anything. They give, you get your money back, but there's a reason why I booked it in December, because now it's all going to be booked up.
Right. And anything else is going to be more expensive.
Right.
I wonder if you could report that. That seems shady.
Well, and I am going to report that. I'm actually going to send her a bill too I got the, basically in the same resort. But I spent 5 hours yesterday trying to find a new place to stay, because, there's like 500,000 to 1 million people that go to this thing. And so I'm trying to figure out, I'm checking everything, and I finally found a place. It's going to cost me like $3,300. And the one that I had before was like $2,500.
Wow.
Right. And so it's like, crap, man. I mean, that's $800.
Yeah.
And it takes like 5 days for them to reverse, for them to reimburse you. So I'm out like, it's like, because I don't take big time money out of the company. You know what I mean? I try to live on a salary like everybody else.
Right.
And that makes things tight.
That's real money.
Yeah. So that was yesterday, but it's going to be like 70 something down there. So I guess I'm not going to complain.
No. Wow. That sucks. We had much better experience. Last year, we were going to go down to the Fort Myers area for spring break, and COVID hit and everything got shut down. And so we reached out, and the owner refunded the money and turned it around like within 24 hours.
Nice.
So definitely we have that bookmarked. Next time we get to go, we're going to use them again. I mean, that's good customer service.
Yeah, for sure, man. It costs this costs $800, and we got like 7 people going, and I'm not gonna charge them more. I'm not even gonna tell them about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't need to stress it. So
that sucks.
Yeah, I pissed away 5 hours yesterday, and I don't really have 5 hours to piss away.
No. No, I've seen your calendar.
Yeah. I was I should see the messages I was sending back and forth to her, because anyway, I'm not going to bitch too much about it. So we're working on a bunch of stuff here. I know you are, I am.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been working on is I still have been working on the book, and I finally put on my calendar. So now we're going to see some acceleration.
Good.
On the vCISO handbook. I blocked 3 hours every morning before work. Well, you have to get disciplined. I mean, I don't know if any of the listeners have ever written a book before, but if you just kind of like do it when you have free time, you never have free time.
Right. Yeah, you do. Well, I think that's with a lot of the stuff we work on is, I know if I don't block it on my calendar, things happen, things come up. I forget about it because other stuff is happening. So,
yeah. So we'll see some acceleration on that. I've been working on S2 org R3 using the new CIS controls, version 8. I'm hoping they don't totally changed, because they're not like released yet. They're in the workbench. So if you go to CI, if any listeners want to participate, anybody can go to CIS, go to their website and sign up for the workbench. And there you can see kind of the discussions that are ongoing about the latest version of, way back when, used to be the SANS top 20.
Yep.
And then it became the CIS top 20. And then it became the CIS controls. And so it's going to be, looks like 18 controls this year. But I'm breaking it down, for consumption in the S2 org tool. So this will be revision 3 of our content. And I think I'm like 140 controls in, and I think I just finished number 8.
Yeah, I've got whatever 300 something for the CMMC.
So I thought the hardest part was going to be doing this first part where we take the core, control frameworks and sort of, it's going to be harder to mush them together, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was looking at the notes. The IR assessment is 300 something. The CMMC is like 175, 176, something like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because, CIS is not a holistic look. It's good, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it's focused very much on the technology for really outward facing.
Right.
Well,
the new controls in 8, it gets tougher for them.
That's good. And again, I like the CIS. I don't want to sound like I'm being negative, but it's not. The current version is not holistic, but I don't think it ever claimed to be.
Right.
But then you've got CMMC that has a completely different set of requirements to pass. It's not really true false. It's, do you have 2 of these 3 things? Right. And the different levels have different requirements around it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this turns out. Mm-hmm. And see the different people's take on it. And I'll say I was really happy. I've been working with our consulting team, the vCISO team, and they sent over their wish list and contribution to it. So I stayed out of the process with them. So I didn't have anything, I didn't have any influence. This is all them, but I was helping kind of guide Megan and some of them in terms of, what to do and things. So I was really happy to see that come over.
I was happy to see that come over too. And then until I realized it's more work for me to do.
Well, there is that.
I did like it too, though. It was really cool. It's what do I got? I got it open here. Maybe 6 pages of just suggestions and ordering of controls and such like that.
And what's nice is it's kind of by suggestions by the people that mm-hmm. by far have done the most of these, right? It's
right. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good advice. These are things you only wish you had, until you have them. Then you're kind of like, wish you didn't, because it does make more work, but it makes it so much better, man. I mean, and certainly the end result, the people receiving the assessments it's night and day. So I'm excited to work through that.
Yep.
So that's good. You've been working on an IR assessment, an incident response assessment? Maturity
assessment. So it's pretty much done except for that final scoring piece to make it into the S2 score. Mm-hmm. And then some figuring out math around retention times and how that factors into the score. But nice. For the most part, it's true false with hey, how long do you keep your backups? 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 plus. And so 12 plus gets the full credit, and then you get progressively less as it goes down. But it's for the most, it's completely functional. It's just you don't have that final score at this point. But
Very cool, man. I'm excited to see that. And now have you guys, has the team already taken that and applied it or used it a couple of times, at least the content, right?
Yeah. So the first time we did it on ourselves. So the IR team interviewed me as a FRSecure representative, which was interesting considering I helped create it.
Right.
But it was in that we realized that how we had things worded and kind of the ordering it needed some tweaking. So that's always good. You never know those things until you've done it.
Yeah.
And then we've done it with those changes, done it on 2 customers.
Awesome. Now, did I tell you anything about the Gray Matter Society?
No, I was like, what is that?
Oh, what is that? It's another one of Evan's harebrained ideas. So, on the shit show that we do, every Thursday night, we talk about kind of some deep stuff sometimes. And one of the questions I had posed, and we might even talked about here briefly, was, what's at the root of all information security industry problems, right? So that's a good question, to drive a whole bunch of conversation. And through all that conversation, we had a bunch of really good ideas. Like, first of all, we just assume that there is a problem. Well, depending on what perspective you look at it, it may not be a problem at all, right? If you're a vendor who's selling security stuff, I mean, Axonius was just, I think, valued at $1.2 billion yesterday. It's like, well, there ain't nothing broken here, brother. We're doing fine.
Yeah.
But, but anyway, that whole discussion, and then we realized that we had some really good ideas on how to fix certain things. But what we don't have is a good place, a good forum where we can talk about solutions to difficult problems and then vote on those things and really have a voice together. Because I'm one voice, man. You're one voice,
right.
You get 1,000 of our voices, then maybe we can affect some change. And instead of maybe the Senate hearing, which we're going to talk about today, you can go to this place and say, well, this is how we should do policy, what have you. So really a think tank, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I know we've talked about that before. I didn't know what, when I saw it, I was like, what is, so yeah. I mean, there's definitely room for something like that.
Yeah. And we're going to stick to, just like we do at, the companies you and I work for, we're going to stick to the mission. And we're going to have strong core values, and we're not going to deviate from those core values. So if you're coming to participate in this think tank because, you want to make a big name for yourself and make a bunch of money or influence decisions on behalf of some certain technology that your company sells, none of that stuff's going to work.
Yeah. Oh, and I think based on our experience, it'll kind of self-police itself, self-moderate to a good extent, because so many people are just tired of constantly being sold to, right?
Right.
Just that's not the point.
No, exactly. And oftentimes you're either being sold a bill of goods, we joke about it, AI, everybody's got AI, but nobody's got AI,
Mm-hmm.
So you're either being sold a bill of goods, it's being sold products they can't do what they promise that they will do, or they're products that you can't use anyway because you don't know how to. Yeah. Or you don't have the manpower for it.
I think that's probably the bigger, more common issue.
Mm-hmm.
Buy something that in theory would be great, but it's not configured properly. I mean, how many times in an IR have we heard, well, how? I thought we spent all this money and we have all this technology. How did this happen? How did we not know?
Right.
Well, because it wasn't configured properly. It's not catching everything.
Well, right. And what people don't realize is when you do those things, you actually make things more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because now you've got another product in your product stack, or you've got another set of applications that you need to patch, and you don't even know how, you don't know how to configure it well. vulnerabilities typically come in two flavors, right? It's missing updates and patches, or meaning that there's a software flaw, or you didn't configure it well.
Well, and I think yes, there is that security piece, but also the bigger issue to me is it gives people a false sense of security and they stop paying attention. They're like, well, we've got this in place. I don't have to be as vigilant. It'll alert me. And that's not the case.
Yeah, very true. Good point, man. All right. Well, anything, it's your week next week. If you can think of a guest, I don't know. Guests are kind of fun because they mix things up a little bit. They make us a little bit different.
I'll think about that. I like having the guests because exactly it does give a different voice and perspective.
Yeah. So we'll do that. Anything else new at FRSecure Security Studio? Anything exciting?
It's crazy busy.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So yeah, I'm working on the S2 org CMMC stuff. The IR assessment is pretty much wrapped up. And then doing a NIST maturity update, kind of redoing that based on some new guidance that we've seen come out on how it should be done. So kind of combining the ISACA 5-step people, process, and technology with the NIST for levels of maturity. Writing controls and scoring and all that fun stuff.
Nice. Is that the one? That's the one for Blue Cross Blue Shield?
Yeah, that's what's driving it. But I'm doing it in a way it'll be that useful for anyone. We've had, multiple larger clients say, I want a maturity assessment, not the risk assessment, which is like, whatever. I don't necessarily always agree with that, but if that's what they want, it is a valid thing. It's just, we always, the fun part is we always map that back to the S2 and give them the score. And whenever that happens, they're always like, I love this. Yeah. Why are you not just doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man.
If they're being required to do it in a certain way, well, all right.
Well, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, in our industry anyway, we're so disheveled in the way we talk about security, the way we talk, the way we quantify risk, the way we do assessments, the way we talked about CMMC, we talk about CIS, talk about NIST, whether it's one of the special publications, SP 800-53 or the CSF, you talk about COBIT, you talk about ISO. I mean, it's like, my God, let's just figure out a way. And it's not doesn't be perfect because it'll never be perfect, right?
No, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at all of those, they've got to be 90% at the end of the day the same.
I know, right?
But it's just different approaches to how they're looking at the exact same controls, and what the recommendations are different.
Right. And I think we get wrapped around the axle a lot on just certain, I'm finding myself do it, every time I work with controls, I'm finding myself do it with the CIS, controls. You take the CIS wording and then you make, essentially refined controls, because their wording sometimes is somewhat, they'll lump like like 3 or 4 controls into one statement. It's like, that should be 3-4 statements right there.
Yeah. I will say the nice thing with CMMC is it is pretty clear, and they have good guidance on those. So it's just a lot of work kind of pulling all this stuff together and clarifying and, hey, they have this recommendation that doesn't necessarily, you just rewording stuff. So. Yeah.
Reminds me of one more thing. I'm going to reach out to some colleges here. It's not like number one priority, but I'm going to reach out to some colleges to put together that, I talked about, how we secure critical infrastructure. You take like water, treatment facilities, for instance, just give them 2 things: identify, your externally exposed systems, IP addresses, either close them down or secure them with multi-factor authentication. If we just did those two things, say in the next 12 months across the entire country, how much better off would we be?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reaching out to the University of Minnesota, their Technology Institute, their master's program for security, and a few others. Try to get some, what a great project it could be, to work with other students from other universities and colleges and get to work on this, go solve this thing.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, so that's coming too, but there's just too much stuff. I got to stop being sometimes, ADD is like a superpower. Sometimes ADD will put you into an early grave, man. I'm kind of like, I'm on the edge right now. So I got to get back to be like, hey, I'm just going to focus on something now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Funny.
All right. So let's talk about, so last week, I'm not sure how many people realized, even in our industry, that there was an open hearing on Capitol Hill. The Senate held an open hearing. And the hearing, it was titled Hearing on the Hack of U.S. Networks by a Foreign Adversary. And really this was about, or came about from, the SolarWinds attacks of, late last year and, still ongoing today. And part of this was, so you had this committee, the Intelligence Committee, and then you had, and the link, if you want to find it, is, on the show notes website. They had 4 witnesses. They had invited 5, but 1 declined. So Kevin Mandia, the CEO of FireEye, was one.
Mm-hmm.
Sudhakar, I think, Ramakrishna, the CEO of SolarWinds. Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft. And George Kurtz, the president and CEO of CrowdStrike. So you got some pretty heavy hitters, in this committee. The one who declined, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know why you would make this decision, because they were called out at least 5, 6, 7 times, maybe 10 times in that committee.
Yeah, it was like one person started it, and then everyone else was like, "I'd like to add my support to wondering why this didn't happen." So pretty much I think almost every senator on that committee called him out.
Yeah. So Amazon Web Services didn't show up. They were invited. They didn't show up. It didn't seem like any of the committee members knew why. It was just declined, which is really kind of crappy because AWS was used in carrying out the attack. AWS, Amazon has not been, forthcoming. So there's some articles that I linked to also that sort of cover what Amazon's role is in any of this, but it's a really, really important role. Their infrastructure played a huge role in this.
Yeah, and I get it's a tough spot for them, because how would they have known this, right? Nobody else knew. So I get them going, what do you want us to do? Nobody else knew about it, but at the same time, you typically don't want to piss off senators.
Well, and this was a committee hearing. It wasn't, a hearing to put blame. So Amazon not showing up almost makes them exposed for blame.
Oh, like I said, they definitely did not put themselves in a good light.
No. So for our listeners, if you wanted to go watch or listen to the committee hearing, it's about 2.5 hours long.
It was long.
Yeah.
There was really a lot of interesting stuff said, and a lot of things that I did agree with, especially from the witnesses, which probably isn't surprising, but it sometimes it kind of validated our thought process and how we do things to hear, hey, this is what you should be doing. We're like, yes, we've been preaching that for years.
Right. Well, one of the things that's cool about being on, us working together not just, here on the podcast, but, in other work, is just the different perspectives. Because I think I was disappointed in a lot of what they said. I also, there were valid points for sure. But the one part that in the middle of the hearing, or about an hour, 22 minutes in, it's that exchange with Senator Wyden. He's a Democrat out of Oregon, I think.
Yep, I think so.
Where he's like, okay, first of all, Orion doesn't need internet connectivity to operate. I mean, he picked up on that, or somebody advised him on that, which was like, there you go. So we invalidated the least privilege principle for sure, because, people weren't, the IRS of all places, believe it or not, was blocking internet access, from their Orion system, and they didn't have any issues.
Right. Well, so one of the interesting things I think, and this kind of ties into that, is I didn't realize that there was that information sharing block in place between the different agencies.
Right.
Like, what? Yeah. It feels like everyone should have been doing the same thing, and they're not. Each agency is doing it their own way, which really surprised me. But I guess it probably shouldn't have. But
it's crazy, man. Well, the government has become so big, so complex. I think that was a big reason around, maybe FSMA and some of the other types of things they were trying to do at the federal level to try to get them to play by the same rules.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're not doing that for the most part.
But yeah, going back there, Wyden definitely had a good point and said, IRS had it where it wasn't connected or it was blocked, so it couldn't communicate. So they didn't get breached.
Right.
Why didn't everyone do that?
Well, and that's the thing, man. I mean, you have a tool, right? No matter what tool you're using, right? Take like construction, you have a saw, right? You use the saw correctly, right? There's, what materials you can go through, cut through, you wear your safety stuff. And I mean, you use it correctly, right? In the digital world, you have a firewall, and a firewall, if it's used correctly, is a really effective tool at what it's designed for. So his question was, essentially, Orion doesn't need any internet connectivity, period, to operate. So if it was isolated, there would have been no communication back to, the perpetrators in this attack.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be no command and control because there would be no communication. So that point was really well taken. And then he went down the path. And so he confirmed that first with, Mr. Ramakrishna from SolarWinds. And then the second thing he said was, we have these things, these standards, basically. NSA recommends that organizations only allow traffic that's necessary for operation.
Mm-hmm.
And NIST, has the same sort of thing. So we've got, going back to all this crap sort of that we were talking about, you've got all these standards, right? Here's definitely a place where there's overlap. You only allow, so go with default deny. Now, the old way we used to say it, for people who speak the old language, blacklist, right? We have blacklist and whitelist. So you whitelist, meaning you only permit the traffic that's authorized, right? It's that zero trust thing, but like the real zero trust, not some crap I'm trying to sell you.
Right. Yeah. I liked Mandy's answer in that
you and I are going to disagree. That's cool.
Well, man. but it brings about a bigger issue, right? So his answer was, well, it depends, right? In theory, it's a sound thing, but it's academic. In practice, it's operationally cumbersome, which means the businesses aren't willing to do what's right because they're like, well, that's just too much work and it might cause slowdown. So we're not going to do the right thing. And that's, to me, the bigger issue. I mean,
I agree.
I think, reading it, I kind of think he was agreeing, but saying, yeah, that's great, but nobody actually does it. It's not practical. And that's the problem.
Right. Well, the thing that, so, Senator Wyden had asked, basically you have these standards and you do the default deny. Would that have essentially mitigated the attack? And he asked the question, and he used a lot more words than that, but that's what his question was. And then he asked each one of the witnesses to give a yes or no question.
Right.
And so then, Ms. Kevin Mandia is the first one to answer. And I get where he's coming from for sure, but he says it depends. Well, that wasn't one of your options, first of all. You had a yes or a no. And one of the things that irritates me just about people in general, man, and maybe I'm just getting old and it's grumpy and it's time to put me out to pasture, but follow instructions. You were given the instruction yes or no. Answer yes or no. So if it depends, well then it's a no. Because what the question was is a properly configured firewall, one that's set up with default deny, only permitting traffic that's required for operation and authorized. Would that have mitigated the attack?
Yeah.
So Kevin inserted the subjectivity by saying it depends. That wasn't the question. What you're saying depends for is because you're interpreting his question as a firewall, not a properly configured firewall, because the answer is absolutely 100% yes.
Right. I agree, but I can see based on experience of going, yeah, it would, but nobody does it. So that's another question though, right? That's not the yes, no question. But I think it was a good point to bring up.
I agree. And if you would have said, so the question was, would a properly configured firewall have mitigated this attack? The answer is yes, but.
Yeah, I think maybe Mr. Kurtz's answer was reading through it may have been a better response. And he had the benefit of not going first, right? So he got to hear what the other people said and the senator's reaction. But, he said yes. And I would say firewalls help, but are insufficient. There isn't a breach we've investigated. The company didn't have a firewall or antivirus.
But again, he didn't answer the question. The question wasn't a firewall. The question was a properly configured firewall.
But I think, well, yes.
How often have you run into a properly configured firewall?
That's the problem, right?
Bingo.
It's not real.
But that's where we should have focused. That's where it would have been nice to take this is why don't people have properly configured firewalls?
Oh, 100%. I'm with you on that.
We have the technology. What we don't need is more damn technology.
Right.
You already have the tool. Learn how to use the tool.
And I think that's the point that Mandia and Kurtz were making is they're there, but nobody's using them properly. That's how I
don't even think that's the point they were making, because if that was the point you were making, you would have said yes, but rather than it depends, and then go on to say the bottom line is this: we do over 600 red teams a year. Firewalls have never stopped one of them.
Well, and that was I think he missed the point on that one for sure, because he wasn't asking about getting in. He was saying, hey, if they had an egress traffic filtering enabled, would that have stopped it? And that wouldn't stop somebody from getting necessarily in, but it would stop it from communicating back out and continuing.
Right.
So I do agree. I think he missed the point on that statement for sure.
I didn't like his analogy about a gate guard outside the New York City apartment building, blah, blah, blah. Because what you did is you distracted from the root of the problem. You finally got to it sort of at the end, but not in a clear enough manner that anybody, I think most people probably didn't catch it.
Yeah. I can see that. I don't know.
I don't want another damn tool. I have a tool that works.
Yeah. And like I said, the way I took both his and Kurt's was to say that, yeah, the technology is there, but it's not being used properly. Now they didn't say it. If they'd said that specifically, yes, that would have helped, but nobody does it. That would have been the right answer.
Well,
right?
knowing CEOs of very large, multi-billion-dollar companies that just love the money, there's a reason why they didn't answer it the way, as clearly as you and I would have answered it. Because the question is yes or no. Yes, absolutely. A properly configured firewall, according to what the NSA and the NIST have put out as guidance, meaning a default deny, would have mitigated this particular attack. Could you have potentially gotten around it? It'd be a lot more difficult.
This is what I love doing these, because it does make you look at things a different way. And it's interesting now looking at it and having some time to chew through it. The only one of the four witnesses that was very straightforward is the non-security company.
Exactly. Ramakrishna was like,
yeah.
I loved the way
help. Yes.
Thank you.
Whereas,
I grew up in a military family where if my father gave me you have two options, Evan, yes or no. I answered yes or no.
Right. Yeah.
That's a very simple binary, And
the one that I didn't like was Brad Smith's answer.
Oh God, right?
He's like, yeah, it depends, because what he said. Like, he didn't even add any justification.
Right.
At least Mandia and Kurtz gave some justification for their thought process. Why did they say this? So I give them credit for that. Even if they answered it wrong, at least they put something out there.
Right. Yeah, so I would have, there was a lot of that sort of innuendo sort of stuff in the testimony where when we have the opportunity to inject a PR thing or a sales pitch almost, they took that. It seemed like a lot of times they took that opportunity.
Oh yeah. So, and I think Brad Smith was the worst or did that by far the most, pushing, we've said everyone needs to go to the cloud and get rid of their on-prem. Yeah, because you want to charge a subscription.
Right. Yeah. And tell me how that has anything to do with mitigating attacks, right? This type of attack.
Yeah. Now true, because they didn't catch it either, right? But, and I will say this, there is a benefit for using cloud hosting, because I guarantee you Microsoft has more resources to look for this stuff and be aware of it than most companies. But at the same time, that's that risk transfer. Are you willing to put all your trust in them? Because at that point, you don't have a lot of the control anymore. Right. So now
and the way that stuff, like my stuff in my world is everything to me. My stuff in somebody else's world is a very insignificant part of their world. So, take a bunch of marbles and put them in a bin. I'm just one of those marbles. In my world, that marble is all I am, right? This is me. I'm going to protect this thing as much as I can. At least I care about it. I may not know how to protect it, but I care about this thing. When you put it into, a big bucket like Microsoft's, and one of the marbles falls out at the bottom, in that context, it's like big deal.
Right.
They have these resources and everything, but that marble that happened to fall out was my marble.
Well, and how many times have we seen a data breach where it was a misconfigured, cloud-based solution, either hosted by Azure or AWS, and you're still responsible, but now you're putting it somewhere where maybe you don't have the expertise to make sure that it's done correctly, versus on-prem where, you could put a firewall in place and isolate it and make sure it can't talk to the internet. as opposed to,
right.
hey, we have to have it open to the internet to be able to communicate.
Yeah. One of the wisest, pieces of advice, and I'll keep living with it, man, is, and I think it'll always hold true. The worst enemy of security is complexity.
Mm. Right. And again,
and so the last thing I want to do is add more stuff to it. I already have tools. If anything, I want to remove tools from my environment.
Yeah. Simplify. Well, that's, again, not to say that there isn't a use case for it. There 100% is, but do people truly understand the risks when they're doing that? And I don't think the majority of people do. And that leads me to one other thing I wanted to say was, it was interesting listening to those senators talk, and some of them, I mean, they were clearly well prepped by their staff, but you could tell they didn't really get some of the answers just by the way they were asking follow-ups or their responses.
Right.
But overall, I thought all the witnesses actually did a fairly good job of not talking over them with super technical speak. It was understandable, which is a pretty impressive thing when you're talking about something this complex.
Right. Well, one of the things that's frustrating too is when you talk about, how seriously people take security. One of the first things they go to is how much money they spent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Wyden hit on it, and they were hitting on it, numerous times in the committee. And you've seen calls all over the place. We need more funding, need more money, need more money, need more money for cybersecurity. And they don't. What you need to do is you need to learn to use the shit that you already have well.
Yeah. Oh, and
read a manual. Remember RTFM?
Yes. Yeah. Who does that? I will say the one thing that I liked, and this is obviously could go down a whole nother rabbit hole, but was Brad Smith saying, we need to invest in colleges and technical colleges getting more security people out there. We're outnumbered and have to, are constrained, right? We talk about this. We have to play by the rules. The attackers don't. They don't care, and so, we need more people. And I liked that call and getting that kind of the way it was phrased. I don't remember how it was, but like investing in college programs to get more people, or get more access for people to do this. And
I think I don't know, man. I get that. And I am a big fan of, there are so many college programs anyway. A lot of people can't afford them. I think you got to go all the way back to, K-12. This is a life skill.
Yeah. Well, and take it a step further, right? Like, let's get this type of stuff going into schools.
Right. Don't they say like rising water raises all ships or whatever?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard that one.
Well, so like if you take an entire population and you improve their skill level, it raises everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because right now in the general population, there's just so much ignorance. So, and we did something with, and obviously I'm touting my own or our own idea, right, with the S2 Me, but if everybody did just that or do something, I don't care. It could be ours, it could be whatever. I mean, ours is free, so there's no motive to it. It's just whatever. Mm-hmm. If everybody had an S2 score to just start up, how much would that raise the awareness of security in our country? And let's say we tied some sort of, because people like their gratification, they like their rewards, they like something. Sadly, too often they like something for nothing. But I think it's something like that needs to elevate everybody, right? Because a lot of the things that they're teaching in colleges, I was was telling you about the University of Minnesota, a lot of the things they're teaching you in like the curriculum is like stuff that a lot of that you probably should have already known before you even got
here. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah. So I think I agree with, what Brad Smith said. We do need to invest in more security people in our industry, but I think you got to start like, we got to get everybody better.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it makes sense because, I mean, look at all the kids now have an iPad or a Chromebook or something. I mean, kindergartners up. There needs to be something starting at in kindergarten even.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that goes back to, the teachers that maybe don't understand it. So how do we educate them so that they can provide good content? And yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
And parents, because parents also don't know a lot of these things, right? I didn't grow up with computers. When I was in kindergarten, I didn't have a computer.
No.
So, this is all new to me. So I think I understand what my kindergartners going through when they're working with a computer, but I didn't live that.
Right.
And I may not even, I may have a blue collar job, but where I don't work a lot with technology. Then what? Now my kids probably at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do, like you said.
So here's Mike going off on a tangent, but I was looking through it. One of the things that stood out was, what was the process for Sudhakar Ramakrishna? Like, when did he get offered the job? Did he take it knowing the breach had happened? I was trying to find that and I couldn't find it, but I mean, he started in January. So you're taking on a lot as stepping in as CEO with all that going on.
But what a great opportunity, because one, you can point blame at there's going to, even if you don't point, there's this implied like, yeah, he did that. I'm here to fix this.
Right. Yeah. He definitely has a phenomenal opportunity, but at the same time, it's I
would have negotiated a healthy raise or a healthy, bonus structure or something.
Oh, I'm sure he's got something in place.
I'll take the job, sure, but whatever we had for a bonus, let's double that.
Yeah, and I would assume something that big, high a profile was not a last minute thing. That had to have been in the works for a while.
Right. Yeah, he hasn't even updated his LinkedIn profile yet. It still says
the
CEO FRSecure.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Because that broke in what, December, right? Yeah. So like 3 weeks before he started the job, there's no way he knew prior to accepting it. CEOs don't typically give 2 weeks notice.
Right.
Typically a little bit longer of a transition.
Yeah. Yeah. But I liked his testimony probably the best, because he came off as very honest. He took instruction extremely well. I just thought it was, I didn't feel like there was another agenda so much with him.
I think, yeah, exactly. Well, and I think realistically, he had the most at stake, right? It was their company's product that got breached. The rest of those people found it and were impacted by it, but it was their thing. So yeah, I think he did a really good job of, hey, here's some of the changes we've already made.
But I found it interesting too that this was in the FireEye's environment for a while before they noticed it.
Months,
right? Because I think I think FireEye is a great company. I don't want it to come off this way, but I'm also not enamored by. I'm not easily like wowed in a lot of these things. Because I still believe, and until there's kind of something to take us somewhere else, FireEye sort of stumbled on it.
Oh yeah.
And I think when they stumbled on it, I still believe that it was on purpose. The Russians, or whoever's behind it, it's the Russians. We should just say it. I don't know why we keep playing that game.
Well, it's been attributed to them.
Well, I know, but they're not saying it in the federal government, with the Senate hearing and all that stuff. Remember, they were like,
no, they said it was the Russians. They were arguing about how to classify it. They did say it was Russia, but yeah. Well, I think that this goes to show this is what we talk about. It can happen to anyone. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If people are really wanting to get in, they're going to get in.
Right.
And, there's nothing you can do to, you can do as much as you can to push it out and minimize the impact. But if you have a nation state coming after you, it's just a matter of time.
Right. No, for sure. Because it may not be technological either. Let's say you did have that properly configured firewall and there was no communication, vector back to an attacker in Russia. Well, then they'll come physically, or they'll get something. They'll figure out. They're very crafty, right? It's just like the same thing we did with Stuxnet.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very difficult, environment to get malware into.
Right.
And if you watched or read the story about how that happened, I mean, they recruited quite a few people to finagle its way into that environment.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that was a really good example of being extremely crafty, right? Mm-hmm. Changing the speed without changing the display.
Right.
How do you catch that? Like you don't until you go, what the heck is going on?
Right.
Why does this keep failing?
Well, I do think that this was certainly a sophisticated attack too, but I don't think it was super ultra. I mean, sophisticated. Well, they had time on their side.
Mm-hmm.
They were patient. They were like any really good attacker that was focused on a specific mission and operation. Take your time. We're in no rush.
Well, and I thought I think it was Kevin Mandia that was saying it, because some of the senators were like, well, why didn't they just burn it down and get out? Or why did they keep staying in? Well, because that wasn't what they want. They didn't want to burn it down. They wanted persistence. They wanted to continue siphoning data. So why would they? They didn't want, they didn't want to make a big stir.
Right. Well, I think this is chess playing out on a world stage too. I think the Russians, did play this out, and they still have footholds in many, 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 many places. So don't think that they're out, right? That this was their only attack vector. But the way they're chess players, man. I mean, who in the world is better at playing chess than the Russians?
Well, and if you think about it,
it's no coincidence that FireEye found this attack.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Russians are really taking note of how we're responding to it.
Right.
Which person got mobilized where? How are they doing it? What are they saying? I'm sure they had many, many people who watched the same Senate hearing you and I watched.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I mean, I would agree with, based on the complexity and the scope of this, Microsoft saying, yeah, we figure there's got to be at least 1,000 engineers working on this. I mean, this is not, again, if they want to get in, they're going to get in. They're putting the resources to do this stuff.
Right.
I don't remember who it was. I don't remember if it was Senator Wyden or Senator Warner. I don't remember who it was, but they brought up, hey, maybe we need to have rules of engagement. In a war, you don't bomb the Red Cross, the ambulance, the hospital. How do we get some sort of an international agreement that, hey, you don't do these things because,
But it won't work. I mean, they're attacking hospitals now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you can get, is there a way to do that, right? Come to us.
How? Because
I mean,
if it's not the Russians, it's a criminal gang that the Russians allow to operate on their soil.
It's the government.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. they allow them to operate on their soil as long as you don't. The way the Russians approach it is, yeah, you can go do criminal activity, just don't attack us. Don't attack our resources, otherwise you'll be in trouble.
Oh, I think there's definitely a lot of that, but I think this was actually the state sponsored, not.
But what I'm saying is, in this battlefield, if you're going to say you can't attack hospitals, well, big deal.
Well, yeah, there's got to be something.
Well, I think
I don't know.
Well, so here on this one particular point, because there's many points, but I think on this one particular point where Mr. Wyden said properly configured firewall, Mr. Mandia said it depends. But then the key point is what he said at, towards the end of that sort of statement, because what he said was, in theory, it's a sound thing, but it's academic. In practice, it's operationally cumbersome.
Right, which means, like we were talking about, like businesses just aren't willing to take the time and effort to properly configure it because, oh well, that's it's a negative or an impact on the business that they're like, well, it's not worth it.
So it's operationally cumbersome, but that's I think the point to solve. A properly configured firewall, yes, would have mitigated this attack. However, very few people actually configure their firewalls properly.
Mm-hmm.
And why do they not configure their firewalls properly? Well, in many cases, it's operationally cumbersome, which you can interpret that to be either, because I think sometimes we'll say it's operationally cumbersome because it's work. It's like, because I have to work. Well, you get paid for it, so figure it out.
Well, and here's the thing. How many servers and server software need internet access? Very few, right?
Right.
Or they only need specific ports to, specific cloud hosted, updates, for they think like your endpoint protection, window updates or, patch management, things like that. But you don't need DNS and internet or anything. You don't need external access for what I would estimate 99% of the software and servers that are out there.
Right.
Or at least, it would be very targeted.
And I love this. I agree completely. The Senator Wyden guy has become endearing to me because I'm a network guy. I grew up a network guy, right? A Cisco guy back in the 90s. And man, I love networks. I love how they work. They're beautiful. But he also said this, after talking with, in the statements, he goes, yeah, it just seems to me what I'm asking about is network security 101.
Yeah.
And any responsible organization wouldn't allow software with this level of access to internal systems to connect to the outside world. And you basically said almost the same thing. So that's strong, man, because this is network security 101.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He seems to be probably the most aware, knowledgeable, I guess, of that stuff. I don't know if it's his staff that's hooked him up, or if he went and did the research, but I think he had the most relevant, pointed questions. There was a lot of explain this to me, how did this happen? But I thought his were really spot on.
Well, I love how he said too. So it is network security 101. He's right about the firewall. And then it's any responsible organization wouldn't allow software with this. So that I would love to see legislated. Legislate that you need to allow default deny. I don't care if it's operationally cumbersome. So are 90% of the regulations out there anyway. At least this one would be effective. And two, if you have software with certain levels of access, nobody who's responsible would ever allow this connection with the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's see. I'm going to try and find this.
Because then I'd love to see. Sorry, man. I'd love to see companies then release guidance that said this system does not need to communicate with the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have some accountability on the side of the software maker or developer, because to get them to write 100% bug-free code ain't going to happen anytime soon. But you can have them say that this communicates with the outside world, or this doesn't need communication with the outside world. Please block all traffic, and this is how you do it, as part of the implementation guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and so I was looking for this I guess it's been about 3 weeks, or last week, I'm sorry. Lori posted that she heard from a client that their insurance broker is saying that 80% of insurance companies will deny companies coverage if they don't have MFA, and the others—
That's Marsh, right?
Yeah, charge enormous amounts if you don't. And so you're starting to see that happen. And we've heard rumblings from other insurance companies and brokers that a lot of these insurance companies are considering getting out. Like, supply chain, whoa, this is huge. We're going to lose everything on this.
You are.
So I think you're going to start, it almost is going to, I wonder if it becomes almost self-regulating to some extent. Not that we don't need it, but hey, if you don't do these things, you're not going to be able to operate. You're not going to get insurance. You're not going to be able to do these things. People aren't going to work with you. So you got to start doing them.
Well, there's maybe, but doing what? That's the thing that we keep doing. Oh. We overwhelm businesses with, here's NIST CSF, boom. Here's ISO, boom. Here's this. So what do? They don't have the time. They're not in business for that. They don't have time to read through all this stuff and do all this stuff. Give me 2 things. Give me 3 things to do.
I thought that was good, right? MFA on remote access. Perfect, right? Hey, you need to do this, and you need to do these other, prove that you're doing these other 2 things and be specific about it, right? I think, you have MFA on everything, and you have a good centrally managed antivirus and a patch management solution.
Right.
You don't do those things, we're not going to insure you.
Well, and even that is, even it's like I wouldn't teach a baby how to drive a car. Right. I mean, you have to get them there, and it's going to have to take time. We have to back up on a lot of the things that we're doing in this industry rather than throwing more stuff at it, because something insecure at the core will always be insecure. We have to step back and say, all right, do these 2 things. And then we're going to take this as a journey. And then we're going to do these next 2 or 3 things. And then on and on,
Well, but I think that's where, from a consulting perspective, that's where we can help. But I think these insurance companies aren't information security companies.
Right.
They're getting the things that say, hey, look, we know.
Oh, now you're talking insurance. I thought we were still talking about the fixing the problem thing. Sorry. Man.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, it all comes like insurance dictating, hey, you need MFA.
Right.
They're listening to the experts saying, hey, MFA is going to be the biggest thing you can do to reduce risk. So they're saying, all right, you need to do MFA. They're not agreed. They're not going to be the ones saying how they should do it, but those companies then need to come and find people that can help them do the right thing.
Right.
So I think it's a multi-layered approach, right? Somebody's got to dictate, hey, you got to start doing these things.
Right.
And then somebody else has to come in and say, okay, here's how we can get you to do the things you need to do.
Right. All right, we're coming up towards the end. We could talk about this for a while. It's really good food for thought, man. And you can tell that we start getting a little animated.
We're passionate about what we do.
Hell yeah. When it pisses me off, because I think these problems are very much solvable. The problem, and it's because, I was following along in your thought process, and I'm trying to figure out, what people say and how you attack these types of ideas. So you say MFA, there's still we have a lot to do in this industry, because I think a lot of people, there's a certain population that would say, well, yeah, but you can hack MFA. Okay, but that's not the point. Stay focused on the point. I think a lot of times we don't even know what the hell the point is in this industry. You know, the point is not to never have another SolarWinds again, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're going to say the same thing, man.
Yeah, minimize the impact.
Reduce the likelihood of this stuff happening, and get better at responding to it quicker. Yeah. And you're not going to do that if you keep adding more stuff to it, because you keep changing the goalposts. So you're not. Who knows, right? It's just nuts.
Yeah. A lot of work done.
Yeah. So news stories I had, and we're not going to cover them today, but if you want to see them, they're on the show notes. Hackers release a new jailbreak tool for almost every iPhone except for the latest version, 14.4. So we'll be running that. Chinese businessman plotted with GE insider to steal transistor secrets. This is not something new either. And I think it's something that flies under the radar quite a bit, is, the industrial espionage, state-sponsored industrial espionage that happens, all over the place. And then NSA embraced the zero trust security model, which awesome, I guess. It's not, no, man, it's just not anything new.
Right.
We just called it something else and put a pretty sticker on it. And then now people are out there selling crap like CrowdStrike, for instance. Their definition of zero trust ain't nothing like the real definition.
Right.
What am I going to do, Brad?
Just keep helping one company at a time.
That's right, brother. I love working this battle with you, man. It's nice to have somebody, and I like the fact that we don't see things exactly the same way, but our hearts are in the right place. We love helping people. We want to solve these problems.
Yeah, the end goal is the same for both of us. It's just how we see getting there is going to be a little different, and that's what makes it fun.
It does make it fun because I totally respect your way of getting there. I think when you have this mutual respect, it's like, you have a great point. Can I fit that in with my point, or do I need to change my point? You know what I mean? And you figure out the solution that if we both do these things, right, it makes the world a better place.
I mean, you saw it today with me realizing, the non-security company had the best Oh, yeah, okay.
Right.
And I wouldn't have had that realization if we hadn't had the conversation we did. So
true. It's
awesome.
It is awesome. All right. Any shout outs quick this week?
Yeah. I'm going to give a shout out to Renee. Was stressing out and having a bad day. And I don't think she even knew she had, what she said made such a positive impact, but it really just completely made my day. And just, took a lot of, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Okay. And relieved all that stress that I didn't realize I was kind of carrying. So that's Renee.
That's cool, man. Yeah, there's always so many people to give shout outs to. I'm going to give a shout out actually to you, Brad. I've seen you doing some really cool stuff, and you seem to be just kind of, in a really good season where you're creating cool things. And I've every interaction I've had with you in the last couple of weeks has been cool, really cool. So I know you've been through some wavy rough waters kind of thing, and you're staying strong, man. I'm really proud of you. I'm excited to get back to this book with you. So
thank you.
Shout out to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So thank you to all our listeners. Send things to us by email at unsecurity@protonmail.com. If you're the social type, socialize with us on Twitter. I'm at Evan Francine. Brad's at Brad9. Just our names, no spaces. Our Twitter handles, other Twitter handles you can, follow or find. Stuff that we're doing is Unsecurity is at UnsecurityP. Security Studio is at Studio Security. And FRSecure is at FRSecure. Get people signed up for that CISSP mentor program.
I think we're at like 3,800, 3,700, nice. 3,800, right in that range.
That's beautiful.
That's insane.
I love it. And it's awesome. It's people we're helping. All right. So that's it. We'll talk to you again next week.